Last time here on Mars in the Shadows, I reviewed the Don Bluth classic The Secret of NIMH. I wouldn't say The Secret of NIMH is perfect or call it Don Bluth's best film, since I didn't watch it the same way a lot of you guys did, but for what it is, it's still a really good film and I can see why Don Bluth himself calls it his personal favorite work. The animation is beautifully grand, the characters have some unforgettable charm, and the score is powerfully amazing. It definitely tops All Dogs Go to Heaven and The Land Before Time, but it's not good enough to top Anastasia and An American Tail, which by the way is my personal favorite Don Bluth film. But of course, even a movie like this couldn't be left alone, and MGM decided to make a direct-to-video sequel. Much like the predecessor, I never saw the sequel as a kid either, but if there's one thing I remember the most from what little I have seen and heard, is that this is definitely not like the first, and I already hated it to death. Well, what do you expect me to say? It sucks. The end. Okay, I guess I could talk a little bit about it. Before I start shitting on it, let's give credit to where credit is due. Since this is a straight-to-video film made on a low budget, it's obvious that the animation got a major downgrade. The most I can say that is positive here is that at least it does try to stay true to the designs of the original, with a few little changes on Mrs. Brisby's kids and how they look when they are older. That alone is definitely no easy task, since the characters have a more realistic look than other animated films. Aside from that, the backgrounds are also nicely crafted, showing the beauty and size of Thorn Valley and the dark and spooky tone of NIMH. And even the effects look pretty good as well. Maybe not the best I've seen, and this film doesn't have much use of effects, but they are okay for what they are. Sadly, for the purpose of the film, that's where my positivity has to end, but I'll get to the animation's flaws once I talk about negatives. Also, if I have to give this film one other credit, it would be in the voice acting. Dom DeLuise and Arthur Mellett are the only cast members that came back to reprise their roles. But even the new replacements like William H. Macy, Ralph Macchio, Doris Roberts, and Eric Idle did a really good job. And that's all the things I can consider good on this movie. Now onto the bad. Now as for the story, I want to express my main issue right now. It's confusing! And its lack of consistency and continuity is the main reason for that. Why is Timmy the chosen one that gets to go to Thorn Valley? Where did the Great Owl go after the last time we saw him? How did Martin become the evil ruler of NIMH? I don't know, nobody knows, because this movie doesn't bother to explain any of that shit. In fact, Martin's backstory is the closest explanation we get for anything in this film. I will get back to that part in just a moment because that is more about the characters. Speaking of inconsistency, it can also happen on little things that have almost nothing to do with the plot itself, where one character would quickly change his mood within seconds. Not to mention that it's very rare this film would make the slightest reference to its predecessor.
I'm supposed to find the Great Owl, just like you did.
The first NIMH movie had some really clever writing related to evolution and giving explanations for what was going on and was filled with dark and mature themes. Here, however, there's nothing creative, dark, scary, or shocking to be found. And if you tell me that the closest thing for any of that is this guy, then I'm not buying it. This movie killed one of the best parts of the NIMH universe! Now I'm gonna destroy this movie! With words! And leaving a negative review! And making it look stupid! Look, I can't really do much to lay vengeance on the movie. I'm a YouTuber, not Batman.
The council decided that the risk to Thorn Valley was just too great. We can't go.
We decided Jenny was right. The Lost Six belong in Thorn Valley, so we came here to help rescue them.
No, dude. Make up your fucking mind and stick with it for the entire movie. And I have yet to talk about the story itself. It's bad enough that the film can't decide on a certain thing and stay constant with it. Aside from Timmy trying to prove he can be a hero as great as his dad, the gang is also on a rescue mission trying to save the Lost Six, a group of rats, or mice, or whatever, that didn't escape NIMH. Only to discover that Timmy's brother Martin is the evil ruler of that place. You know, at this point, the plot feels more like it was made for an episode of a TV show. but extended to an hour, and it results in one of the main reasons why this is so boring to watch. This doesn't feel like a legitimate story, but rather a checklist for just the basics of a plot without putting in the effort of making them work together. And last of all, this last line is so cheesy.
Dad would have been proud. Hero.
It really is just baffling seeing one of the greatest non-Disney animated movies turned into nothing but just a lazy kids film. As for the characters, well, no matter how much effort the actors put in, there is nothing they can do to salvage this movie. If the writing and dialogue are so hopeless, then who's going to care about any of these characters that are now one-dimensional versions of their former selves? Starting with Timmy, or Tim, whatever you want to call him, he wants to prove to the world that he can be a great hero as much as his dad, but for most of the time, he either screws everything up or does pretty much nothing. It's understandable that adult Timmy isn't as annoyingly stupid as his younger version of himself, but that's not really saying much. Aside from Timmy, Justin and Mr. Ages just play the generic teacher roles telling Timmy what's right and what's not. Jeremy is now an even weaker comic relief than before, and the rest of the returning cast like Teresa, Cynthia, Aunt Shrew, and Mrs. Brisby herself are only there for the sake of being because we need to make it clear that this is a Secret of NIMH sequel. Of course, there are new characters in this movie as well, like Cecil, Mario, and Floyd, but they contribute little to the plot and are mostly meant as comic reliefs.
Hey!
I will murder you in your sleep if you ever open your mouth again. Also, another new character who I know for a fact has the right material to work with is Jenny. Not only does she tell an interesting backstory regarding the Lost Six, but she also seems like she would do anything in order to save them, especially when two of them are her parents.
Mom! Dad! You're alright!
Jenny, we're all in danger.
We'll have you all out in a second.
She does have the material of being an interesting character. In fact, why not have her to be the star of the sequel instead of Timmy? Yeah, too bad the movie does absolutely nothing with it, leaving Jenny to be just the generic love interest, and that's it. However, those guys are nothing compared to Timmy's brother Martin, the most boring, pathetic, annoying, unlikable character in this entire movie. Martin is, in my opinion, the worst character from the first NIMH movie. His role may be rather small, but the way they show him here, he's more of a dick than actually having feelings for his brother. So what difference does it make here? In fact, in my opinion, the sequel made him worse. And when he's evil, his character gets so over the top that it gets annoying and disturbing so quickly, despite his performance by Eric Idle.
You'll be happy, oh so happy, if you just say yes.
This character. I see a bunch of familiar faces running around, but I'm having a really hard time finding a character. Going back to the animation, yes, there were some nice things to say about it, but even that was where my praise had to end. While it does look like the Secret of NIMH at first glance, trying to bring it to life paints a completely different picture that is not as appealing as its predecessor. Yes, the characters are drawn like how they were before, but they certainly don't move like how they used to. Not only is the character animation a lot more limited and takes away a lot of life from what they had previously, but in some scenes they're more wild and zany. I guess it's okay to have that style for more comical characters like Jeremy and Cecil, but it looks really off on the rest of the cast, making them look less like legitimate creatures and more like, well, cartoons. Okay, I know that's a weird thing to say since I am talking about a cartoon, but I am referring to the transition of going from this to something like this. It's just jarring seeing this kind of jump from one animation style to another. However, that's not the only problem this movie has with its visuals. If you have a good eye for the technical aspect, you will find a lot of animation goofs. Yes, I understand when animators have to cut corners, especially when they don't have a lot of money to work with. And I get that they didn't want to recreate the footage from the first NIMH movie for the sequel's opening montage, but there is a fine line between cutting corners and straight up cheating, and this thing does pretty much both of that. like coloring errors, reusing animation, character movements not syncing together with the backgrounds, and the mouth movements barely matching what the voice actors were saying. In fact, there was one moment where that mistake was so noticeable it almost pulled me out of the film.
Sorry, Hero. I don't know what came over me.
Will I say that the animation here is terrible? No. But then again, I can definitely say with confidence that I've seen better. Well, I guess that rounds everything. Oh, wait a minute, what's that? What do you mean I forgot something? The songs?
You wanna relax? Then take what you please. There's candy galore and it's all made of cheese.
Oh yeah, I forgot about the songs. To kick it off, I want to describe these songs with one word alone. Why? Just because this was made in the 1990s and it was during the time of the Disney Renaissance, that doesn't mean that every animated film has to be a musical, okay? It's bad enough that the songs are pointless. What's even worse though is that the songs are obviously terrible. If we're not counting the closing credits song My Love and My Life, there are 5 songs created throughout the course of the picture. I will say right now that there is one exception.
I will show the world.
Yeah, sure, it may be rather bland and look a bit silly, especially towards the end, but at least it's the most tolerable. Everything else is just painful, to the point that I just want to punch one of these characters in the face so that they would finally shut the fuck up. And no, please don't get me started with Just Say Yes. It's awful. I hate it. Especially that happy ass number makes it look completely out of place. I think the worst song of the movie has to be the first one, Come Make the Most of Your Life. Do you have any idea how bad it is when the first song of a musical is also the most torturous? That is never a good sign.
So much to say to you.
So much to share with you.
You'll be happy, oh so happy, when you come with me. A stimulational, excitational, magic mystery show. And the whole wide world should be.
Shut up! Shut up! Shut up! Shut up!
Do I even need to go on about why this movie is bad? Well, it's not the worst animated sequel I've seen. The Secret of NIMH 2 Timmy to the Rescue definitely deserves a spot among worst animated sequels. I mean, seriously, go onto YouTube and you'll often find this on many lists of worst animated sequels of all time. It may still have the same designs and some decent voice acting, but everything else was miserably watered down, leaving us with a dreadfully bland story, depressingly downgraded animation, one-dimensional versions of familiar characters, and pointlessly lazy songs that make the experience completely irritating. However, if I can be honest about one other thing, I wouldn't call it the worst movie that sells itself as a sequel to a Don Bluth movie. Yes, it has a lot of problems, but it's not the worst Don Bluth sequel. My least favorite Don Bluth sequel is All Dogs Go to Heaven 2, which was just a cash grab copy of the first film but with a few little changes. That'll be a topic for another video, but the reason I hate that movie is because it is lazy. NIMH 2 may be kind of lazy and boring, but what bothers me more is that it's very baffling, and frustrating, and inconsistent, and bizarre, and stupid. Very, very stupid. It just goes to show that NIMH 2 was indeed a total misfire. Secret of NIMH 2 is a 2 out of 10. Oh, and before I sign off, if I ever want to see these characters again, then maybe a live-action animation hybrid in the style of Who Framed Roger Rabbit, where the characters make fun of themselves. Sort of. No, I'm not saying that a movie like this should be made, because let's be real folks, that's never gonna happen. Then again, this is Hollywood after all, and they'll make movies about literally anything. But until then, see you later folks!